Hi, here we are with our first essay of the semester. Chapter 1 essay, Why Do We Create Monsters? It says, write an essay in which you respond to one of the following questions taken from Monsters Chapter 1. Okay, so here we have, these are the readings, almost all the readings. We skipped over Mary Shelley. Not that I want you to skip Mary Shelley, but we're just not choosing any questions from Mary Shelley. But each of these readings has questions at the end of the article, okay, at the end of the excerpt. So you read the essay, read the excerpt, whatever it happens to be, read the article, then look at the questions. Here we have Stephen King's Making Connections number 7. Hitchcock, Reflection and Response 5, or Making Connections 8, and so on down the line. These questions will be the basis of your essay. Your essay will essentially be a response to that particular question. Now, the final draft of the essay is due on Monday, February 13th, 11:59 p.m. Be sure to follow the out-of-class essay guidelines for matters of format and style. Be sure to include a word count at the end of your essay. Okay, that's usually very easy. You just write it down, so 1,286 words, whatever you come up with. Remember, you must meet minimum requirements, which are listed below, including word count, sources, and subject matter. No late essays will be accepted while a signed doctor's note or other verified excuse. Okay, so we're not just saying, oh, okay, you can be late. Submit. Now, we break this down into parts, okay? So the first thing we're doing is the thesis statement with the topic outline. That's due on Friday, February the 3rd, 11:59 p.m. Please have MLA citation entries for one source. The source may be from our textbook. A participation grade will be assigned for this. Now, you should note that if you look at Canvas, if you look at the module for Chapter 1, you will see that there is not only the place where you're going to turn this in, but there is a sample. Okay, and I want you to look at that sample, and that sample also has a video that accompanies it, so that you can look and see just exactly what's going on. Okay. Now, after that, the class will be divided into peer editing groups, and I will post instructions on how to get to your group Canvas page. Submit your rough draft to Canvas Workgroup and to me by Wednesday, February the 8th. Okay, so after you're doing your thesis outline, I will be responding as quickly as I can, and then you need to start in on your rough draft. Okay, it's not very long, but hey, you signed up for an 8-week class, right? This is what happens because we have to do all the same work in half the time. Submit your completed peer editing sheets to your Canvas work to me and to your group by Friday, February the 10th at 11:59 p.m. Now, again, I will post further instructions about this. Right now, you shouldn't be too worried about that. Right now, you should be focused on the thesis statement and topic outline. Okay. Now, the minimum requirements. This is what you need to be able to do. First of all, 1,000 to 1,400 words. That's an approximate sign, right? Right there, that means like approximately 1,400. So it's a nice size essay. Not huge, but not too short either. Okay. A strong essay structure, including introduction, concession, rebuttal arguments, main body, and conclusion. Now, if this is new to you, and especially the concession and rebuttal part may be new to you, please make sure that you look on Canvas to the standard argumentative essay. There is a handout and there is an accompanying video. Okay. You need to have citations from at least 2 sources. One of these sources can be from our textbook. They can both be from the textbook, as a matter of fact, if you wish. All right. You can always use more than the minimum. What I do want to see is that you are engaging the original text. Okay, so in other words, let me scroll back up. If you choose King, Hitchcock, Del Toro and Hogan, Klosterman, Brothers, Lowry, Asma, whichever one you choose, you should at least have that one. And then you have one other one. Now, maybe you get it off the internet, maybe you get it from our library, Maybe it's another article from our textbook. That's up to you. Okay. But you need to have at least the original text and then something else besides. MLA format in presentation and documentation, including correct works cited list. Again, use the handouts on Canvas if you need help, which, by the way, there are videos that accompany my handouts, or use some of the web links that guide you to other MLA support, which is, again, available on our Canvas site if you just go to our modules and kind of scroll down where it says web links. Okay? Now, let me just scroll back up here for a second to our authors. Now, first author is, of course, Stephen King. I say, of course, Stephen King because he's arguably the most famous horror writer living today, at least working in English. And he writes a piece about basically our attraction to horror. Now, he's kind of focused on the horror movie, but whatever he says about movies is true for other forms as well, whether it's poetry or prose. What have you, what other forms you might have, oral tellings of the tales, things of this nature. Now, Susan Tyler Hitchcock is writing about the creation of the Frankenstein story. Now, we have a brief passage from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and you should read that passage too, by the way. There are no questions connected to the essay, but it does give you a sense of what the written Frankenstein story is all about. Remember, of course, that Frankenstein is the doctor, not the creature or the monster. Okay, that monster actually has no real name in the story. Okay, but Susan Tyler Hitchcock is talking about how Mary Shelley first created that story. And she talks a lot about the history at the time. She talks about the people that Mary Shelley was with, including some of the most famous poets of her era, Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley. And there is the famous challenge. It was a writing challenge that Lord Byron put in front of them. There was Byron, Shelley, Mary Shelley, who was actually Mary Wollstonecraft, the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft. I'm sorry, her name was Mary Godwin, pardon me. Mary Wollstonecraft was her mother. A guy by the name of John Polidori, who was a doctor and quote-unquote friend of Lord Byron, traveling with him. There was another person there, half-sister to Mary Shelley, but history has not dealt with her very kindly, and we kind of tend to forget her. And the baby that Mary had with Percy Bysshe Shelley. And they're sitting around reading each other horror stories of the time, right? Which were very popular, Gothic stories, as they were called. These novels, cheap novels. And Lord Byron, kind of just frustrated, said, why don't we all decide to create our own story? We could do better than this. And one of the great ironies of literature is while the so-called great poets, Byron and Shelley, were really unable to do very well with this, Mary came up with the idea of what we now know today as Frankenstein. Another interesting piece, though, is that John Polidori also came up with a story called The Vampire. Now, vampires weren't new. He didn't invent the concept of a vampire, of a blood-sucking monster. That's ancient. That goes back thousands of years. But what Polidori did for the very first time is he made the blood-sucking monster attractive. He made him like an English noble person. Somebody that you would think was a normal human being. And this person was charismatic and very sexual and killed his victims. Now, Bram Stoker, about 80 years later, creates the character of Count Dracula. which really, of course, encapsulates these ideas. But it was Polidori who really, first of all, fused or brought together the blood-sucking monster with an attractive but dangerous human personality. Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan discuss vampires more fully in their work, and kind of talk about this idea of why the vampire is still so, shall we say, attractive. Chuck Klosterman takes on our modern fascination with zombies, right? The zombie as a monster, the one who just sort of rolls around and eats people, right? He's particularly interested in the television show The Walking Dead, right? But there is a lot to be said about the zombie in our time. Brothers looks at the very famous and popular monster Godzilla. And he looks at the world of post-war Japan, post-war meaning post-World War II, which of course the war ended with the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Bombs, plural, I should say. And how just a few years later, out of the trauma, the national trauma of that experience, Ishiro Honda creates this monster we know as Godzilla. Clarice Lowry, takes on a modern, contemporary, I should say, monster, Slender Man. So we can look at characters like Frankenstein and Dracula and Godzilla as creations of a specific time and place. Well, guess what? We make our own monsters too. So Lowry writes about the internet phenomenon, Slender Man, and this new monster that is a creation of our own time. Finally, Asma takes a big picture look at the use of monsters. The use of monsters to help us understand our world, and maybe, he argues, even kind of cope with real life issues, real life violence and murder and other horrible things that may happen in our world. So that is to say that the fictional monster is kind of a trial run in some ways for what we might experience in the world around us, away from the movie theater, or away from the video game, or away from the book. So those are the writings that we're examining in Chapter 1. As I said, read them all, including Shelley, even though she's not mentioned here, because Frankenstein is such an important piece. Read all of Chapter 1. Read the questions that are here for you. Choose one of the questions that is on this list and make that the focal point of your essay. You need to respond to the question in the form of your argumentative essay. I wish you the best of luck.